Welcome to Dine and Dish, the podcast where hospitality meets real talk. I'm your host, Michele DiMeo, restaurant diva, serving up the stories, strategies, and behind-the-scenes truths of the restaurant business. Well, hello, everyone. We are back for another episode of Dine and Dish. And I have so much to talk about with the crazy weekend that I just had with the Oscars and crazy parties at Philip Klein, and LA was amazing. But we're going to jump right in today's show. We have three amazing guests on, which is different for me, at least. Usually I have one. Today I have three great professionals in the IT world, and we are going to talk everything tech. And for everybody listening, everybody knows Steve, my producer and my right-hand man in the office, is our tech solution for our group. And I asked him to be a part of the show as well. So he can get some insight from our amazing guests today. So why don't we jump right into it, and I'll get them introduced. We have Kenny Anderson on the line, Dan Rooney, and Jenny Brandt. And we're going to jump right into it with Project Resource Solutions. And are you all on the line with me today?
Yes, we are.
We are here.
Thanks for having us.
Good. Well, welcome. And before we jump into what the whole technology piece in restaurants and IT solutions, I would love one of you all to just tell us about your company and what you do and what you bring to the table so the listeners can get excited about our show today.
Sure, we'd be happy to. So Project Resource Solutions, and thank you for the great introduction, is a 25 plus year old business. Most people know us by PRS, and we work with folks that own, operate, or manage multiple facilities throughout the country. And in a lot of what we do happens in the restaurant space. And we are the field service arm of the IT technology that goes into restaurants, retail, hospitality, and we're the actual smart hands solution inside of the building. We are the ones that are going above the ceiling and behind the walls and putting all the IT technology in place.
Well, I have to say, Steve will be my witness here. I am a IT nightmare. If it has anything to do with computers, I don't know what it is about my aura, but I shut everything down. So the three of you would have the biggest challenge with me being in the room. So it's a good thing I'm on this side and not in the room with you. But and I love the fact that you focus on restaurants, because every restaurant we do, IT seems to be the biggest challenge. And you all know from a restaurant perspective, if the IT solution is not perfect, it affects everything. It affects the line, it affects the front of the house, it affects your POS solution, it affects your music, your lighting, it's everything. And there's so much chaos behind what goes into installing the IT solutions. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you survey a project, how you get started, where PRS saw these gaps to create this solution, and how you go about the whole process of starting from scratch when you're opening a restaurant. Because, whether it's one restaurant or 30 restaurants, there has to be a method to that madness, right?
Correct. There does. And that's really the key. You nailed it. Because if you want to go from 1 to 30 or 1 to 2, you need all those things in place. And when you're talking about an owner or operator and talking about that you don't understand computers, I think it's one of the biggest things in dealing with restaurants today is that the technology in the restaurants is no longer supporting operations, but it is operations, right? And there's a difference between a smooth, scalable, profitable restaurant and one that's a constant fire drill. And when we think about that, and it usually comes down to the decisions that are made before opening day. and those selections are made ahead of time, bring much ease for churning out the customers that you need to get through the line and get through to be profitable. So those decisions that need to be made are from POS that you mentioned, right? Your network, kitchen display systems, online ordering, kiosks, digital menu boards, security cameras, communications, which is phones. All of those things, if we think about them before we open, makes your life much easier after you open.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and everybody knows the downtime, lost revenue, frustrations. I mean, I'm going to tell you a quick story before we jump into the meat of the show. But we were doing a restaurant in Florida, and Steve will tell you the nightmare. How many times the system crashed, or the Wi-Fi didn't work, and the credit cards couldn't batch and couldn't get sent to the bank. I mean, it was crazy. There was one night that I was in the restaurant till, Steve, what was it, 4
We were
a.m.?
we were there, like, I don't even know. I lost track of time. We it's I that was a night because, I mean, we used a POS solution that, was primarily Wi-Fi, and to this day, I will never put another Wi-Fi device in any restaurant because it is a nightmare. Because like, if your router goes down, everything shuts down, at least with some, like, the hardline systems. If one device goes down, it's one network switch, or it's one device, it's not your entire network. And but yeah, that, like, credit cards weren't processing, the devices all disconnected from each other. They were hopping onto different Wi-Fi hotspots. Like, that, it was the worst possible case, and
Oh
it all
yeah.
happened all at once.
If you could take anything that would go wrong and everything that would go wrong, it all did. And it was like the worst night ever. And we were so busy. And, I go to close everything out at midnight and the whole system is shut down. And I mean, of course, I have to let my team go because I'm not going to hold them there as the owner. I mean, they have to open the restaurant at 7 a.m. And I mean, I think I left there at 4 a.m. by the time we were able to batch and get everything set up. So, from that story, I'm going to give you the platform to say, okay, well, this is the solution that should have happened. And maybe we should have had PRS in Florida with us. But if you can kind of talk through that situation from, the whole wireless versus hardwire and switching of networks. And oh my God, it was what a nightmare.
Correct. Yeah, and those stories, you're not alone, right? And I think it really goes back to, uh, you're selling food, right? You're selling an experience at this restaurant, and that's what you're focused on as a restaurant owner. And at the end of the day, sometimes technology is a second thought, and it really needs to be thought out, well beforehand, well before opening day. You need to give some time for training in there. You need to give some time to make sure everything is working, and so you don't have that downtime and those 4 a.m. nights, right? And when you
Yes.
have a solution provider that can take you end to end, it eliminates a lot of the finger pointing. And there's, the old saying, one throat to choke. So that goes from the network, and always, there is some restrictions when you're wireless or you're on Wi-Fi, but part of that solution needs to be done ahead of time. And that is doing surveys and making sure you have coverage in all the areas you need it. And if you're on a tablet or your servers are using a personal device, you need to make sure your restaurant is covered and you have no spots that you don't have coverage, like Steven said. And it's very important. So, the biggest thing is you need to choose that POS first instead of last. That's your biggest decision when you're starting, and it needs to take into account all the things that you mentioned. How are you taking orders? How do you want to get people through your store? Is it, if you're a quick service restaurant or if you have drive-through operations, you need to think about all those things. And the other part is, and Steven mentioned this too, is the backup. Do you have a backup system? Is there a wireless solution that you have as a failover? Because if your main circuit does go down, you still want to be operating, right? You still want to service those tickets. So you need a failover, and you need to think about that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then you need to think about future growth, right? So, it's the least expensive time to do anything IT related is when during construction, right? Before the walls go up, before the cement.
100%
Yeah,
with
agreed.
wiring and right, Steve?
I get
We know that. We know that too.
Janari yells at me all the time because I go in there, but like before we even have a kitchen equipment, like a refrigerator, like single refrigerator, I'm in there like envisioning like where's the line going, where's my power poles going, where's my printer gonna go, like how are we gonna walk through it? It's and then I'm like, I need like cat cables over here, I need outlets over here, and Janari was like, you're adding so much money. Like I'm like, trust me, you need it. Like
Well,
I stopped being
and it's also creating that map, right? So,
yeah,
it's so important to have a map, and that was actually leading into my next question. So, you mentioned the POS provider, okay? So they pick their POS provider, the restaurateur. Now, you come in as the IT experts and you say, okay, well, this is how we think it should be done. And the POS company wants it installed a different way because we've seen that as well, where you have that power struggle of who installs it, what's the best way, and creating that map. So, how do you all know when you get into this space and you start creating and installing your wires in the system, what, like, who's the right way, like how does that simple install turn into a disaster, and like what's the red flags and who should make the decision, and that's where you have that power struggle because we've seen that happen as well.
So, there's a lot of components to what you just asked,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
one of the things that I think we pride ourselves on is we provide every client a single point of contact. And with that single point of contact, if it is a particular POS, and let's say it's spreading across 100 sites, we understand that technology. Our technicians, if need be, are certified for it, and we document it. And they can call our project manager at any point if they get stuck to make sure it's done right. But also going back to your point about wiring and cabling that might be required for the POS, we prefer to do the cabling if we can. We're very good at labeling it, but more importantly, we think it's so important that we give a lifetime guarantee. So if you use us for cabling and there's a problem in the future, we will stand by it.
Yeah.
I think
So,
it also comes down to, and Steven brought it up, but it's having that, air quotes map, right? And those are
yeah,
things you need to think about beforehand. Where is that kitchen printer? Or are we using KDS? Where's the best place for our POS at the cash wrap? Do we need two? Do we need three? What are we doing about Uber Eats? What are we doing about
yeah.
delivery in general? Do we have a specific area for that? And all of those things that you're thinking about and how the operations are going to run on a daily basis, you want to put down on paper. And if you can, that's something as you're designing your restaurant, you want to have drawn into the plans. And a lot of the architects today are pretty savvy with IT layout. And people that do this like we do are also great help to, calling up, say, hey, listen, I have my first restaurant I'm ever opening. I don't know what's going on. This is what people suggested. Can you look at it for us? Get
right.
get a second set of eyes on it and understand how all the technology is going to work together.
Yeah.
It could come down, Michelle, to something as simple as you have cameras inside of your restaurant, and it's the angle of the camera that you want. What do you really want to capture and why? So if you're thinking about the cash wrap or POS specifically, do you want to capture the interaction between the customer and your cashier? Or do you want to capture from behind the cashier and see the cash drawer? What's important to you? Or are both? And how is that laid out? And those things made beforehand and not during or after construction. The least expensive time to make all these decisions is before, right? After everything is open, it's just going to cost you more in the long run.
Because then all the
Yeah,
walls are up, there's change orders, there's all this stuff to get that all done. And know what you were mentioning those beforehand, like about angles of cameras and stuff. Like that's a company like yours, there's a lot of nuance in a restaurant that a general contractor may not understand. Like, oh, you want cameras? Let's put them in these corners. You need some data lines, whatever. But like you were saying, like you got to kind of project out and figure out how are people walking, like what's going to be the dynamic, what's the flow to kind of predict where everything actually has to be once you guys open. And I sit there with architectural drawings and elevation drawings, and I do exactly what you're talking about. And I sit there and I map everything out with, like, I mark it all when I hand it to the contractor and be like, here's your map, this is exactly what you're doing. And then before he does it, we walk around to confirm everything, and then we're good to go.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that we're all talking through this because Steve knows. I mean, cameras are so important. They've been mentioned a few times, and where you put them, where they face, where they tape, we've used them on multiple occasions. I mean, we've even had landlords contact us for things that incidents that have happened outside the restaurant on the sidewalk. We had a break-in next door, and we caught the perpetrator running past the restaurant. So cameras are so important, and they do need to be thought out from the beginning. And I guess that kind of goes into the whole point of what operators don't even think about, but they should in the beginning. So planning beyond just the install day, and making that list, from coordinating with landlords, general contractors, vendors. Let's talk about even local code compliance and logistics. I mean, there's so many things that you need to think about that as a restaurateur. I mean, you go into this, and I mean, I know when we first started opening restaurants 25, 30 years ago, we didn't sit down and think through all this. And one of the other big things that comes up every time we do this show, and Steve is my witness, there's two things we talk about. We talk about COVID, and then we talk about AI. So I'm going to let you all jump right into the $1,000,000 question about how AI has affected IT and your business, because it's affecting everybody's business.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go ahead and take this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so IT or AI in IT obviously is relatively new for us. Right now, we will install and we will do anything that our technicians are qualified for in terms of opening, that the owner or the franchisee needs. In terms of AI, if the software is new and it has AI in it or included, we will install it. So,
I think the other thing about AI is it's a great problem solving tool for our technicians, for any technician that's out there. There's a
Yeah.
lot of documentation that AI makes it very quick if you're troubleshooting.
I think also the restaurant owners are looking at, you know, the ones that get the most play in the news, Michelle, right, are the robots, right? Are we going to have robots making all our food? Are we losing
Mhm.
line cooks? Are we losing, where is it really going to help? But where it's really going to help is from a digital standpoint, right? It's going to, it's going to enable you to understand your customer better. It's going to enable you to know what their ordering history has been, and maybe even start predicting and offering suggestions, especially when they're return customers, right? That's going to be built in. It's just going to make the whole interaction ordering process with your customers seamless. And as AI takes off and as the technology becomes more prevalent, it's going to make the operators seem like they can deliver anything they want to these customers. Now, we're also talking about in the restaurant business hospitality, right?
Of
So
course.
I
Yeah.
think that when you're making, those experiences and people that walk away from there and talk about what a great experience they had in your restaurant in Florida is is going to be because of the people. And I don't think that's going to change. Now, there's lots of speculation on what can happen. But I think anywhere that you can use AI insights, you talk about having these cameras, we'll go back to that, and they tie into your POS now, right? And it can flag different transactions. So before you used to have a person, right, review all the footage. Well,
Hmm.
AI can watch it for you and say, hey, your normal ticket is, call it anything you want, $15, right? Quick service restaurant. Your normal ticket is $15. Well, all of a sudden you had a string of $3 transactions, and you're wondering, wow, what's going on there? And it will flag it for you. the AI will flag it, say, hey, there's something to look at. So you go back and you look at it and you see that, maybe it was somebody's friend that was coming through and, we're only charging them for the Coke and not the rest of the food. So where it was labor intensive to do those types of things in the past, AI now is able to do that for you. And it brings a better experience for you as trying to manage it as an operator.
Yeah. So, two things you brought up. One, robots. That is a whole nother show, and I'm sure we can talk 30 minutes on robots. I mean, we even saw we just flew back from LA this past weekend, and we were sitting in the United Polaris Lounge, and all of a sudden this thing rolls by us, and I looked at my husband. I was like, what the? It was literally a rolling cart, like where you bust the tables, and it was a full robot, and it was going table to table. And as it goes table to table, you put your stuff in the cart. So it's almost like self-busing. They still had people walking and assisting, but I mean, they're even using these robot type systems in the airport. It shocked me a minute because this thing came rolled up right to our table, and I thought, okay, what do I do with this? But hospitality is always going to be hospitality. So, it's great that we're creating all these robots and IT and we're getting so advanced, but you know, that old fashioned go on a date, bring your family, your husband, your wife, whatever it is, and dine out and have the experience, because it is truly about the experience. I mean, that's why restaurants are successful, and they always will be successful, because people want to work and deal with people. I mean, everything happens over a table, a glass of wine, food. So it's going to be interesting to see the whole landscape of how IT changes. I agree. I mean, I use AI every day with different things with our restaurant group, but you don't want it to replace the human factor, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the reason you're going out is for that experience, right?
of course.
That's why you're going out. And depending on the level of restaurant you're going to, right? Sometimes it's just convenience and you run through the drive-through and it because you're hungry. But other times when it's a special event, right? And you bring your family, you need to have that the owner operator, that comes around and knows your name and welcomes you. You can't AI that out of the restaurant space.
No. And the robot that comes to your table definitely does not have that personality.
Well,
At all.
Walking around, if you're on a college campus too, you'd see walking around just the delivery robots that are out and about, dropping off food everywhere. And in the city here in Chicago, we have them going up and down the streets and delivering your food. We're going to be having what do we call the guys in the air?
Oh, drones.
Oh, those flying, the cabs. It's crazy. Well, I saw my first third-party DoorDash, whatever little box that crosses the street. It looks like a little go-kart with a box.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was. And it was like trying to weave in and out of cars in Jersey City. And I thought, oh, this thing's going to get it.
I know.
It's pretty
They're
wild.
so it's amazing what's happening. And it's still even with all the technology and all the AI and all the different things that are coming out, right? You go back to the fundamentals of that restaurant, and you still need, even if you go wireless, like Steve doesn't like, even if you go wireless, there's still a component of cabling that needs to happen, right? You need that access point, you need that modem, you need that circuit brought into your building. So that's not going to change either. We need to actually have the ability to use this technology, and that happens, again, best time to do it is before you're finished with your construction.
Yeah. Actually, you just read my mind, because that was my next question. Talking about the whole network infrastructure and how, you have one location, now you go to 10 or 50 or 500. How does that whole consistency across locations work, and how does the install affect that? So can you talk a little bit about how you take that from one concept to 500?
Absolutely. So we've been talking about it, and Steve gave a great assessment of how he does it, right? He walks through, he draws that map on a piece of paper, and how we do that very similar, right? We have as-built drawings, right? So we do the first restaurant, and some things change, right? We think we have we make those best decisions beforehand, but sometimes we get into opening the restaurant and we say, okay, you know what? We need to move this station somewhere else, right? We thought
Mhm.
we wanted it here. We don't like it here. And we kind of work out the kinks. But the key is that we can document all of that, right? So the next time in the next restaurant that's open, we can repeat that, right? And we're sold on, now we know where the camera locations are. Now we know what angles we're trying to cover. Now we know, that the outdoor camera needs to look at the trash bin, or the drive-through cameras. We had one at this first restaurant. We think we need two. Let's try that out. And having it all documented and landing on the technology or the manufacturers of the technology that we like, and making that consistent throughout, so that now that these stores are open, let's say your second one's open, your 30th one is open, and they're all
Mhm.
the same way, and you look in the data cabinet, and Steve mentioned elevation drawings, and they're all the same. The patch panel is in the same spot, your switch is in the same spot, your modem is in the same spot, your NVR is in the same spot. That makes troubleshooting so much easier when you're open and you're not having a fire drill constantly. So we or anyone, your service providers can service and help you remotely and say, hey, port 7 should be blinking green. Is it? No, it's not. Okay. We can help you because it's the same port 7 at every store, right? That's the camera that's looking at that said garbage can in the back or dumpster in the back. So having that consistency helps you in the long run because everything's the same, and that makes the fire drills much less. So we know how to service it. We know what could go wrong. We know exactly where it is. We know how it's labeled, and we know what to look for. And so does the owner and operator. They know what to look for too. And
Yeah.
once you have the consistency, then it makes it easier to troubleshoot and help service the restaurant in the future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one big thing that I've noticed. Like, companies like Toast, they contract local networking consultants and third party companies to come in and do their all the installs. And the problem with that is everybody does it different. And so when we have our corporate locations, I do it myself. That way, they're all the same for that exact reason. But unfortunately, with like franchisees and locations out of state, when we rely on those third party companies, then you always have that fire sale at the beginning of like, well, how is this connected, where's this going, how is this supposed to work, and etc. um
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah.
one question about your setups though too, is you were talking about like duplicating it from location to location, but when you run into new business owners that, let's just say, they don't know anything about networking, or it's their first restaurant, obviously every concept is a little bit different. Do you have a standard bullet list of questions when you sit down with these new owners, of things that you go through and the topics that you cover, that you ask everybody before you start designing the space?
Yeah,
You didn't know. See, you didn't know you were going to get grilled by Steve. See, this is not only a podcast, but this is an interview.
I think Steve, all the things that we've touched on is the really walking you through, right? And it's just as you said, let's walk you through a typical day, and let's understand how you want the restaurant to operate, right? And those things in our checklist, and I started rattling off some of them earlier, and it does bullet point from the beginning, which is your POS selection. Now, um, we don't sell the hardware, right? We don't sell the software. So we can recommend, but once that decision is made, and that's your most important decision, you need to know what POS you're going to have, right? And that could also, it ties into your ordering, it ties into your back office analytics. It's kind of your digital menu boards. Everything can drive from the software actually that's on your POS, right? So those kind of decisions need to be thought out, right? And Michelle, you mentioned a franchisee. I believe that you go to the next one and they kind of do their own thing. That's why it's important. And part of our checklist, Steve, to answer your question, it might not just be the restaurant owner that we're going through this checklist with. It could be the franchise itself, right? So the restaurant itself and getting with their corporate headquarters and outlining these steps for them. And then they can in turn hold the franchisee accountable, right? So then they'll have some consistency throughout all of the restaurants. And that comes down to POS, which is number one, right? Network you brought up, um, a redundant backup that we want for that network, whether it's cellular or Starlink or whatever you want. Um,
Mhm.
KDS. So online ordering kiosks. Are you going to have kiosks for ordering? How are you going to do that? Digital menu board, security cameras, communications, and then the back office itself, right? Where you need a space, you need a PC, you need maybe to run some reports. So all of those, that's kind of the checklist we go through. But it's more important to do what you've done, Steve, and walk through the restaurant itself, and then you get into, take it from one restaurant to 300 restaurants, but not every restaurant space is exactly the same. So that's where site surveys and working with the general contractor and the other trades is staying in constant communication with them and understanding what's happening before you go, right? So if we have the ability to go and do a survey and make sure that the conduits are in place, make sure that the walls are where they're supposed to be, the backboard's there for the rack and things like that, that's really important. And you can identify some areas that may be causing us trouble down the road before we even get there to install.
Do you guys
Yeah.
ever go as far as doing like, also a sit down with like the menu design with the owners as well, of like how all the food is going to be produced, where it's going to be coming from, to kind of figure out that dynamic as well?
We do not, no.
Okay.
I think that's a whole another area of operations.
But that also goes into programming of the space. So, that's into menu. And I mean, you're more the IT solution where you can get it all installed and set up. But, what Steve's going into is, Steve, that's your job.
Yeah.
That's where you come in. So,
that changes
the
how many
team on
prep.
phone they're your support, but then they're not going to do your job too.
Well, it changes like how many prep printers you need, where the printers go, like where, depending on where the kitchen equipment is. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I'm kidding. Steve, I'm only kidding.
I also think that as an IT provider, right? Obviously, with the experience that any IT provider has over years, in our case, it's over 25 years, you learn a lot. But I think Kenny's description was spot on, because it's really understanding the end-to-end process.
Yeah.
And through that, you get that one consistent standard.
Yeah. So before we run out of time, because every week, every podcast, I say the same thing. I must bring on the best guests, because we get to the point where at like 35 minutes and I'm like, we didn't even get through half my questions. But before we run out of time, one, I want you to talk about what questions, if they're a brand new restaurant owner and they're coming into this space, they're a brand new franchisee, what questions should they be asking their IT partner? So if they're interviewing you and they don't have a Steve in their office, what questions should they be asking to find out if they're the right partner for them to as their IT solution?
That is a great question to ask. I think one of the most important questions you should first be looking at is, what service level expectation do you want from your technicians? So that could be, they have good references. They are rated out of, I believe it's 5 stars. And you can see this all online. Travel questions, stuff like that. In terms of getting your technician, you don't just want to pull them offline. They might not have any credentials from online. You want to make sure that they are the level of the service level that you're looking for. The expectation is going to be met. But more specifically, we want to make sure we're getting our technicians there on site on a timely manner, and travel questions are always going to be a big one.
I also
What
think
about what questions would an operator ask about scaling? So they're using a company like yours to go from 1 to 50. Are there any specific, now they're sitting down just like Steve's doing to interview, what questions should they ask about how quickly should they scale, and what IT advice would you give them as they grow if they're growing quickly?
Yes, I would. Number one, too, one of your questions. So if you're interviewing, let's just take it back a step, right? So you want to know how they're going to run their job, right? And it's going to are they willing to coordinate? And this is what it takes on a new construction, right? Opening a new restaurant. Are they willing to coordinate with the electrician, with the general contractors? Are they willing to have those lines of communication open, or are they just going to come in and run cable and hope for the best? So what is their level of, and Jenny mentioned, service level agreements. And this is kind of just part of the deal. Like, are you willing to coordinate all aspects of it? Because we all know that a new construction is very fluid, right? We have an opening date 6 months out, and we know that's going to change. Usually gets pushed out. It could get pulled in. How are you going to coordinate that? That's a question you should ask her. Do you have documentation? Are you doing as-built drawings? Do you warranty your work? Dan mentioned earlier, we offer a lifetime warranty on the cabling plant. So once it's put in, if it's a cable that failed, that's on us. What is their warranty? What is their SLAs? As Jenny mentioned, what is their SLAs after the store is open? How are we going to service downtime, right? We want to eliminate the downtime. So then we also talk about, do you do walkthroughs? We just mentioned those a little bit earlier. Are the conduits in the right place? Where are all the data drops going to be? Not just last minute hacks once you're in and try to figure it out. You want to understand that once the store is open too, what about, how disruptive it is to operations? We understand restaurants, right? We know we're not going to be in there at lunch, right? We have to know those things. We don't want to just point the finger at everyone else. We have to understand what that customer wants. So some of those questions, are upfront. That's what you want to know, is how are they going to, build this for you, and then to take it to the next one. If it's one or two more or 50 more, it's the documentation that makes it repeatable. And Dan mentioned much earlier about our single point of contact project managers. They're the experts. They know everything about your restaurant. They know every piece of technology that's in your restaurant. And they usually call us and ask us, what do I have in this store? Even though it's pretty much the same, some things change as we talk about spaces change, right? So those are the questions you need to know, is how are they going to protect you, the owner operator, moving forward?
Yeah. So the one thing that you said that I love, and I think it's missed so many times with restaurateurs, they hire for the best price. Like, they'll go out and they'll get 3 different quotes, and it's like, oh, this electrician's cheaper than a true full boutique IT solution. And you said a very important quote, and I will say quote because I say it all the time. We know restaurants, because you can get an IT solution that has never installed a restaurant, and they work in buildings or they work in tire places, and they do homes. But knowing the restaurant business is very unique, and they need to understand that space. So that piece that you brought into that conversation stood out for me as a restaurant owner, because that's the first thing I ask. My question is, how many restaurants have you done?
Correct. I mean, that's a great first question, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
so important.
it is very important, especially once the restaurant is open and running. I think it's crucial. And beforehand, while you're in the process of construction, do you work well with others? That's really the question. There's a lot of egos on a construction site, and you have to know how to balance them, right? And the thing that's special about IT really is we're usually the last ones in. So maybe we're there to pre-cable, or we're getting the cables above or behind the walls. But then at the end, we're there when it's almost time to have your staff in. We're almost ready for training. We're almost ready to fire up the ovens, right? So it's kind of different than the other trades that are in there.
Yeah, for 1,000%. I mean, we know about contract GC egos for sure. We've seen many of them in our 30 years of doing this. All right. So I have to get your insight on what you think 2026 is going to look like for the IT world. So as it relates, so everybody listening that's opening a restaurant or opening their 50th restaurant, where do you see this whole IT shift going? And do you have any advice or suggestions for us?
Well, I guess I would start by saying I think the trend, and we'll especially see it this year, will be to outsource this if you aren't already doing it. I think the fact that an outsourced provider is probably much more cost effective, but I can see it also starting to branch out into, for example, warehousing, where not only are you providing the end-to-end solution from an IT perspective at the specific location, but you're also managing their inventory. You're also in a situation where, you can stage the product, you can actually deliver the product, and then you can actually install the product. And that's very cost effective. And you look at economies of scale, I think owning it from the point of, origin through installation and through maintenance, I think that's the trend you're going to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about scaling, right? Part that we didn't touch on this end-to-end solution, and Dan brought up a really good point, is that once we've landed on kind of our solutions for the restaurant, like when I say our, you, the owner operator, and we've landed on our hardware decisions. The way that we can bring that to market faster is we can inventory that for you in our warehouse, stage it, configure it before it even gets to site. And then we're just plug and play from there. So that's a very, very important piece that we can offer, that a service provider can offer you to help in that growth model. We're not waiting on deliveries, right? We have the inventory in-house. We look at construction schedules, and you're going to open 2 restaurants this month and 5 next month, or maybe 10 in Q4, something like that. We can plan for that. We can have all that equipment. So we're not waiting on something, or we have delays in shipping, right? So that's very important too. And then what you want to look for, Michelle, you brought it up, like, have you worked in restaurants? Do you have, as I grow, do you have nationwide coverage? Are you experienced with the POS that I did select? Do you have the structured cabling expertise, and not just IT guys trying to figure it out on the fly, right? What are your guarantees? So some of the red flags are, you don't have any coordination with the GCs or electricians. There's no proactive surveys or monitoring going on before you get into your restaurant. And then we want documentation and labeling standards on our cables. And, we talked about that earlier for troubleshooting. When you hear we can figure it out on site, that might not be your guy.
Yeah. You think? So we're running out of time. For everybody listening, you know where to find me. DMs are open. You can always reach me on Instagram. You can go to restaurantdiva.com. Of course, email, call. I'm always looking for amazing guests, amazing new topics for what you want to hear out for my listeners. But before we go, a couple quick lightning round questions. Are you guys ready?
I think so.
We're done.
All right, let's do it. So installs, opening day or soft opening day when you're doing your go live install?
Soft opening day.
Yeah, for sure, right? I can't tell you how many times we've had people there for opening day, right, Steve?
Yes.
Oh, we're going to open. Oh, we'll come for the first few hours. Lovely.
Family and friends.
Exactly. Digital menus or printed menus?
Well, so that's a great. Now I know we're lightning, but I'll just answer digital. But when you say menus, I think of 2 different things, right? So I think menu when you're sitting at your table. Is that is what we're referring to. I like printed. If we're talking about menu boards, static or digital, I think digital.
So I brought that up because my biggest pet peeve in the world, I sit down at a restaurant and they hand me an iPad for the wine list.
Yeah.
That
Or
is the
scan
worst.
the QR code on the sticker on the table.
Oh, I can't
Oh, that-
stand it. Or you sit down, right, and there's a QSR code on the table and they say, take a picture, there's the menu. And I'm thinking to myself, why do I want to order on my phone if I'm doing, I mean, that's a fast casual vibe. Like that's not a full service. That's so not connected to the guest. So that's
No.
why I brought that up.
Yeah, menus, I agree with you. Print it.
Yeah. Especially for full service. And I agree with you for fast casual, digital boards, digital TVs up in front of you 1,000%. They're easy to network. They're easy to update. I know we do that now with our Vivi's Chicken and Mac. We created a system now where we can change them and upload them from the office. But yes, that's why I
great.
asked the question.
Your LTOs and things like that, you can change up.
Exactly.
It's perfect. Yep.
Yeah. What about POS installs? I mean, do you do it overnight? Do you do it during service? I mean, what's your thoughts there?
Well, if you're open and running and you're doing a POS upgrade, overnights. And if you're a new construction, then obviously, it's during the daytime. But anytime you have an open restaurant, it's always best. What we generally do is as soon as the restaurant closes, even though we know that there's still operations going on after close for a little bit, that's when we come in. And you want to make sure, if we have a disruption, it's not when you're trying to make revenue.
Yeah. And last but not least, where can everybody find you? So for everybody listening, if they're looking for a IT solution, whether it's restaurant or any other industry, what's the best way to find your company?
You can find us conveniently on LinkedIn at Project Resource Solutions. Or
Is there an email or a phone number for the company you can reach out to?
yes, you can.
Absolutely. So we have sales at prsol.com, prsol.com, or our website is prsol.com as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we went a little bit over. I appreciate your time. This information is so important. And I agree 100%. As a restaurateur, I don't want to be the IT solution. And Steve's heard it. I say it to every guest that I have on the show. If you can outsource and stay the restaurateur and bring in the professionals to make you successful, effective and efficient decisions are so important. And as you heard today from all three of my guests, technology doesn't fail your business, execution does. So if you find the right partner, it will make all the difference, because as a restaurateur, you are there to make money on your food and your experience and not let the IT fail you. Would you all agree?
Absolutely.
Totally.
So for everybody listening, that is another episode of Dine and Dish, and we will be back next week with another great topic and another great show. And thank you all for being my guests, and we will talk to everybody soon. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Everybody.